Welcome to Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigrila Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor and leadership coach. In this podcast, I share ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways in which plants can help you lead a naturally conscious life. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. It's me, Tigrila Gardenia, and today I've got a good one. This is actually episode 52, and we're going to talk about 3 characteristics of a plant's direct connection with time. So, if you've been listening to this, and if you haven't, go back and listen to some other episodes. I pull from many different sources when I'm talking about plant wisdom. Some of our episodes are going to be extremely scientific. Some are going to be more artistic, creative. Some are going to pull from the social sciences, and others are going to pull from our spiritual, foundations. So as you know, I live in Damanhur, one of the largest spiritual eco-communities. As you've heard me talk about in other episodes, right? I have a very broad background from Kabbalah to practical spirituality and design and science and engineering and all these different pieces. So today, though, we're going to kind of we're not going to take a deep dive. I promise you, we won't take a deep dive, especially because in July, I'm going to be hosting the next iteration of the Damanhur Mystery School. And there, we're going to take a super, super deep dive. I'll make sure I put it all in the show notes for you, that where you can find out information. So if you're really interested in the topics that we're talking about today, that, in addition to everything you find in the Naturally Conscious community, is the place where you can find out and understand this better. Because time, I almost didn't do this episode because I had written it out. I wrote myself a bunch of notes of all the different episodes that I wanted to do. And then I thought to myself, am I insane trying to cover this in one podcast episode? But you know what? Here we are. I'm recording. Let's go ahead and let's try to do this. Let's talk a little bit about time. So there's an entire, by the way, season. So all these different episodes, an entire series on time travel connected to Damanhur in Gaia TV. So if you've never seen or you don't know anything about time and you really want to understand time more deeply, before we dive into the Damanhur Mystery School, the director of the Damanhur Mystery School, who will be our teacher for this journey, is on Gaia TV. And so you can go and check them out. By the way, I'm on Gaia TV too, Divine Science. Go and check that out too. While we're at it, yeah, just go to Gaia TV. I'm going to put in the show notes a link for you to go to Gaia. If you've never seen Gaia, you will definitely want to see Gaia. So just go. Okay. And after you've gone, come back and listen to the rest of this episode. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about. I just want to lay the foundation for time in a very simple perspective. So we as humans experience time in terms of distance and movement, right? Because we are, as human beings, have these beautiful things called legs and, or movement in general. And so therefore for us, there is the idea of the distance or the movement that I encounter, and then the speed at which I do that. And that helps me understand how time runs. I know there's a much better scientific, technical, definition of that, but you get the general gist. And we, from human perspective, kind of see time moving linearly, right? We move forwards in time. That's the way that we can perspective. Now, if you've ever dreamed before, which you probably have, you know that time doesn't always operate the same way in the dream realm. And this is the reason. The reason for this is because time is actually not a timeline or a linear thing, but time is more like a fabric. Imagine that the world of form, everything that we see, the material world, as some others call it, all sits on top of this beautiful fabric that is time. And this fabric of time, similar to a plant, has all these branches coming out in many different directions. Some of the branches go in what we would consider to be forward, some of them go up, some of them go down, some of them go in all these different directions. These branches of time are these other ways of perceiving and experience time. So really everything that we're living is happening both now. Everything that we've lived is actually now, as well as everything we're going to live is actually now. So when we talk about the stillness, the mindfulness, the being in the present, the living in the moment, in some way, it's when we allow our human mind to, or the human sense of self, as in just like only me, fade into the background and we sort of melt into this time, this perspective of time, the idea of time more as a fabric than as a line. And there are, I was just reading a beautiful article about this the other day. There is this growing concept of vegetality, this plantness, which, when you come and participate in the I Am Plant challenge, right, this 5-day challenge to embody your plantness, this is really what we're going for here. Your plantness is when you, similar to what you might imagine if I think about vegging out, right? Instead of looking at it as a negative, look at it as a positive. Think of it as the benefit. The benefit of vegging out is kind of like a very deep state of meditation, right? My sense of I and self sort of blends and I become the everything that is around me, because plants in some aspects live their entire lives networked in, sessile, conscious of what's happening in the everything. And the fabric of time is built that way. The fabric of time is a very specific phrase from the perspective of spiritual physics, because that's exactly what time is. This beautiful fabric that has all these different branches that comes out from this fabric and allows us to have multiple experiences. Now, because of our, some might say lobotomization, but some because of we've shut down so many of our abilities and perceptions and faculties, we experience only the linear fashion of time. Okay. But plants don't, right? Plants, by their very nature, both physical as well as subtle, have the ability to experience almost the full range of time. Now, from a spiritual physics perspective, this is in part because where we as humans are part of an entire evolutionary track that comes from a primeval divinity through to a galactic imperial war, like all these types of things that plants are not necessarily connected to, because they've been on this planet before. 470 million years of life from a human perspective have given plants the ability to experience different aspects of the, wow, these are hard terms. Brace with me and follow along with me as best you can. And if you have any questions, by the way, put them in the comments, or of course you can, join the Naturally Conscious community where we're continuously having these types of conversations. But from a perspective, you could say that plants have experienced different laws of the universe. Let's just say it in that way. So these different laws of the universe allow them to have different perceptions and different relationships with time. And at the same time, they have been here since before the birth of humanity. So they have experienced all of the birth of humanity. And so they have those memories as well. And this is what makes plants so fascinating. From an esoteric perspective, a plant is both an I as well as a we, as we really all are, but plants still literally live it. And in Reconnect with the Plant Kingdom, I put in my seminal course, which you can find in the Naturally Conscious community in Blooming Sprouts. I literally put resources with scientific papers and articles written about these phenomenon. And in the Naturally Conscious community lately, I've found some really good ones, and I've been putting them in there for you to see. So this isn't just me talking or even just Daman Hurrian's talking, right? I am bringing together and presenting to you what is being captured from many different sources, what's being pulled together to better understand this. So because plants have literally lived these experiences alongside humans, and because of their very relationship with time, different than our relationship with this linear time, the plants have been able to hold these memories. And in some ways, trees in particular are the antennas that communicate with other parts of our universe and hold the memories of everything that has happened on this planet and make sure that that gets transmitted. So you could think of it as trees bring in, capturing both from the current environment that they're in, as well as from the cosmic environment, in everything that is happening across the universe or the world of form. And then they bring it into their system, pass it to, how was it? I think Falco Tarasico said once, like, the grass is like the supercomputers that are able to process. If you think about grass being everywhere, there, key is able to like process all that, and then taking it into the soil where minerals and crystals and rocks, and take it into deep time. So do you see this amazing relationship that exists from the way that the earth picks all this up, and earth made up as a multi-species being, as a trans species being, is able to gather up all of this, keep it into the deep hard drives of deep time in rock and in crystals and in mineral formations, with the trees being the antennas that pass it through, the grass and the grasses, not just grasses in one species, but grasses, and all of the underbrush being these supercomputers that then are able to churn through this, and then the trees, and this memory that is still being held. So there are multiple ways that plants, especially trees, have to keep these memories alive. And then when we see the plant kin home, we then have the opportunity to interact directly with this. So let me talk about three major characteristics that the plants have that, I say trees have, but really all the plant kin home has, but trees in particular, being these antennas, are able to sort of, no, you know what? I'm correcting all that. I'm even changing the name of the title of this episode, because it's not really just about trees. It's really about plants. It's about vegetality. It's not even about the plants as in the species of plants, house plants and trees and all of the grasses and all this. It is about vegetality. And we as humans have vegetality within us. So here's number one. Vegetality, as in a temporal vegetation, if you think about it, doesn't have one direction. So that's the first characteristic that's important. When you step out of the realization that time is linear, when you evolve past that, and you can somehow arrive at the conceptualization, yeah, that's the word, the conceptualization that time again is a fabric, and that it doesn't, you then give yourself the ability to start moving across time. This is the reason why we can do this in our dreams. In our dreams, we don't have the conditioning and the limitation that tells us that time is linear, and therefore in our dream world, we're able to experience time in a much more fluid state. So the first characteristic of what vegetality allows us to experience with time is the fact that we can travel through branches, we can travel through the fabric itself, we can travel backwards and forwards and up and down, and in all kinds of different aspects that are probably even hard for us to conceptualize when we think about it with our human logic, because we as humans think a little bit of forwards and backwards, but not side to side. So that's the first one. That's really important. And this is a fundamental characteristic that even just stepping into that will allow us to travel the time network with the help of our vegetality, right? Through our vegetality, we can travel the time network and visit specific experiences, knowing that these experiences are all happening now, because the whole fabric sort of folds in and of itself, and everything becomes the ever present. So when you're able to sort of step out, this is the reason why when you do that type of deep meditation and you enter that vegetative state, time almost doesn't exist, right? How many times do we hear those expressions? Time stands still. It's almost as if time didn't exist. All these types of things happen because that is what's happening. What's happening is you're in the fabric, so everything becomes the eternal now. So that's the first characteristic that's really important. The second is really interesting, is how do I put this into words? Remember, I had said that each world of form has a set of laws, laws of what makes matter matter. The laws, we think of them maybe as our laws of physics is a great example of these. And even the laws of physics, just recently, there has been a new law of physics that has been, that is sort of coming out to light. The idea of oh, how do I oh my goodness. Okay, I'm going to post it because I've posted it in the past. I'm going to post it again in the naturally conscious community. So around the time that you see this, I'll make sure I post about this. But it's the idea that that we're ever evolving, but not just from the perspective of what's happening here at a universal level. Let's just not get into it. As you can tell, my mind trying to bridge my archetype, trying to bridge between humanness, plantness, my animalness, which is humanness, languages, understanding. It becomes so much. I get so excited too then on top of all of that, and that just makes it worse because then I can't put words to things. But I promise I will post about that in the naturally conscious community so you find it. Okay, so what happens is when you step into that vegetal that temporal vegetality or vegetalness, gotta find the right word, temporal plantness. When you step into that, you can now step into different laws of the universe, right? This is again going back to the dream state. Remember, we in the world of form are confined to a series of laws. The laws, like the laws of physics, have a set of rules to them, and we in general have to play within these rules. But these laws and these rules have a different level of saturation in different worlds of form, right? As a different universe is created, each one of them has its own percentage of how the laws of the what we call the primeval laws experience or are experienced in that. Really, they're called the derivative laws because they're derivatives from the primeval law, and the percentage of each primeval law, how it gets applied to that universe of form, is slightly different. So being applied differently to the universe of form means that you can work those laws differently, right? Have you ever, whether you believe in them or not, it doesn't matter, but if you ever think about angels, right, as people talk about angels, angels have a whole series of capabilities that we as humans don't have the ability to do, right? They experience this world in a different way. Why? Because they're operating in a different world of form. They just happen to have had enough complexity, enough evolution that they're able to still, if you believe so, experience this world. Plants the same way. Plants have operated in multiple worlds of form, in multiple levels of experience with different primeval divinities so that they have different aspects to the laws. Why? Because time itself has access to all of these. Therefore, when you enter into your vegetality, you're able to access these laws differently. And being able to exercise and access these laws differently means that you're able to operate in the form differently. I pause because when I think about this, I get so curious. And I think back to some of the most unexplainable dreams that I've had. And I think about them and I try to feel back into them because, of course, when I try to decipher that dream in the world with the laws that I have right now in the waking state, I can't seem to make them fit in. But that makes sense that I can't make them fit in because in that dream, I was accessing them through my plantness. And therefore, I was able to tap into the laws in a different way. So I can't bring them into this form, which brings me to my third point. When you are able to access this temporal vegetality, right? When I'm able to access time through my plantness, I travel through the dimensions, not in a what I would think of as a physical state, but through dreams, memories, emotions. Basically, everything is able to interact. The language spoken is a language of feeling rather than a language of thinking. So I don't think things into being, I experience them into being. I feel them into being. I dream them into being. I imagine them into being. Do you now understand why the arts is such an important part of the naturally conscious community and of everything that I do? Is because, sure, courses like Reconnect with the Plant Kingdom are great to help us understand things and gain knowledge. Of course, other kinds like reading books and applying all of this through practical exercises is important. But the creative arts of all sorts, right? Movement and dance and painting and poetry and creative writing and whatever it is that you experience is the means that I use to get into the vegetative state. Now, mindfulness or meditation is also one mechanism, right? So there's a lot of people who will tell you that you should go through that perspective. More power to you. I'm not like that. Instead, I get into that through dance, through movement, through allowing my body to guide the way, and by allowing my mind to not try to focus on knowledge. Knowledge is great. Knowledge helps me bring it into this world of form. So don't knock knowledge. I think knowledge is important, but it is another means. And the means in order for me to experience time as its true nature is by allowing myself to imagine myself in my true nature. In other words, for me to step out of the logic of form to go beyond that. So, in other words, as a temporal being, and especially through my vegetality or my vegetalness or my plantness, I am able to move through these different branches of time by feeling, imagining, and dreaming my way through them rather than thinking, plotting, and planning my way through them. Does that make sense? I know it's a weird way of thinking, but how do I put into words something that you have to feel? I mean, I can put up lots of different drawings. Why do you think look at this if you're watching this video, look at the scene behind me, right? There's artwork everywhere. There's color. There's all these various elements. Why? To stimulate exactly that. The creativity. The plants, they're the can let me sort of open the door because they resonate. It's almost like a vibration inside of myself. My plantness vibrates from from their plantness, but I can't understand. I can't go through the portal of that vibration if I try to do it logically. Not today. I need to step through it in a completely different way. And that is where that vegetalness exists. That is where not exist. That is what that vegetalness or that plantness allows me to experience. This is the reason why plants experience time so differently, right? So when I think about three characteristics of vegetality's direct connection with time, those are the most important ones for us to really understand or practice with. Like I said, number one, that when you pass through your vegetalness, you can experience the full fabric of time in every direction, frontwards and backwards and up and simultaneous and down and a little bit to the side and at 90 degree angles. I can do all kinds of movement through that fabric. And the fabric then, as I do that, starts to collapse on itself, bringing everything into an eternal present, which means I can jump anywhere in the fabric of time through that eternal present. Two, I'm able to then access the laws of the universe, the building blocks of these laws that make up everything differently because I can access the different percentages that the vegetal world has lived through and accessed. And three, I am able to work with my emotions, my dreams, my memories as a portal of access, not just a remembrance, but literally kind of like the door and the access codes in order to step into that fabric. And I can experience from that point the memories of everything that has happened. And not only that, the archetypes of our universe that we as human beings do not have full access to today. Why are we a society? Why is we as a humanity have so much war and competition and breakdown and all these types of things? Because the archetype of cooperation, of love, of deep friendship have all been lost to us. They're floating somewhere in that fabric of time, known to the plants, and the plants are trying to share it with us. And we as humans almost don't have the capacity, the perceptions, the senses. This is the reason why in I Am Plant, one of the activities we do is the enhancement of even the same 5 senses we currently have, so that we can unlock those extra parts of them, those sensory perceptions that allow us to truly see our universe and our universe of form, rather than just locked in to what we currently experience in the practical and world that we currently live in. I think I'm going to stop here because this is the kind of stuff that you just takes time to digest, right? Like I keep telling you over and over again that the naturally conscious community exists because I want a place where we can have these conversations and we can start to look at the implications, not in one boom. It's not like you have me one moment and you can only ask me questions once, but more. And why I work with people one-on-one, right? In my episode where I said why I do what I do is because in order for you to live this, in order for you to evolve into the being that can live in this plantness, that can experience everything that we're talking about, it just takes time. Which is funny because it doesn't take any time at all because it's all an internal present, but it feels like it takes time from our lineal perception of what we're doing. And I am here for you. I'm here for you every week here on the podcast. I'm here for you in the naturally conscious community every day. And if you want to work together so that we can see how this applies directly to your life, I am going to be there for you every single step of the way. I want you to have all the tools at your disposal, and I want you to have all the space and the time to really process through this and apply it for yourself. So let's get this conversation rolling. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask me. And I look forward to everything that comes as we start to really embrace and understand our vegetality. And once we connect deeply and we start to reawaken our plantness, oh, what amazing things are going to come. So that's me, Tigrea Gardenia. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and remember to like and subscribe and, comment, and more importantly, share it with your friends if you think that these are important concepts that could help benefit their lives. And we will see each other again here next week. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. So join me, Tigrea Gardenia, and my plant collaborators next time on Reconnect with Plant Wisdom.